everybody's losing their minds and somehow still making money. Goldman Sachs dumped XRP. Michael Saylor bought enough Bitcoin to start his own country. Elizabeth Warren is angry at crypto for the 100th consecutive week. And now SpaceX wants your retirement account. Meanwhile, oil is pumping, gold showing mixed signals. Congress accidentally might save crypto, and retail investors are panic selling their bags to institutions that are quietly loading up like raccoons in a Costco dumpster. This is 2026, where the economy feels fake, the market feels manipulated, and somehow the degenerates are outperforming your financial advisor. Let's break down the wildest week in crypto, macro, and geopolitics, and what it actually means for your portfolio. Goldman Sachs quietly exited its XRP ETF position, and the XRP army reacted like somebody unplugged grandma's life support. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit. Goldman doesn't marry assets. Goldman dates them. They came, they made money, they left. That's not a funeral. That's Wall Street. Goldman leaving XRP is like a tourist leaving Las Vegas. The casino is still open. And while crypto Twitter was writing emotional breakup posts, XRP ETF inflows were actually beating Bitcoin and Ethereum. Wallet activity is surging, new users are entering, and then Australia's central bank basically said,
"Yeah, this XRP ledger thing actually works."
Read that again carefully. A central bank used XRP infrastructure to tokenize government bonds. That's not meme coin nonsense. That's sovereign level testing. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve is floating new payment frameworks, and suddenly Ripple's infrastructure keeps showing up like the nerdy kid from high school who quietly became a billionaire. While everybody chased frog coins and AI scams, Ripple spent years doing the boring stuff: compliance, lawsuits, partnerships, infrastructure. And now, the rails they built actually matter. XRP reality check. Can XRP hit $1,000 mathematically? Sure. Realistically by 2027, slow down cowboy. For XRP to hit those numbers, global settlement adoption explodes. Crypto market caps go nuclear. Regulatory clarity finally arrives. Institutions fully integrate XRP rails. Possible? Yes. Guaranteed? Absolutely not. But one thing is clear, XRP is not dead. It's just moving like a government employee. Slow, bureaucratic, and somehow still getting paid. Michael Saylor bought more Bitcoin than God. Michael Saylor woke up, looked at the global economy, and spent $2 billion on Bitcoin before most people finished brushing their teeth. Strategy now controls over 4% of the entire Bitcoin supply. At this point, Saylor isn't buying Bitcoin. He's trying to become Bitcoin. And the crazy part? The market actually treats his purchases like monetary policy. Every time he buys, Twitter posts laser eyes, YouTubers scream, supply shock. Your cousin suddenly becomes a macroeconomist. This is now psychological warfare. Saylor has created big dot energy. People genuinely believe if Saylor keeps buying the floor, it must be higher. And honestly, that narrative itself becomes bullish. But here's the scary part. $500 billion in Bitcoin could eventually be vulnerable to quantum computing attacks. Yeah, the nerd apocalypse. Now before you panic, this isn't happening tomorrow. Quantum systems capable of breaking Bitcoin cryptography are likely years away, but smart money is already watching migration timelines. Because in markets, the people who prepare early survive. The people who wait for CNBC headlines become exit liquidity. The bigger story. Congress introduced legislation for a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Think about how insane that sentence would sound in 2017. The US government potentially holding Bitcoin as a reserve asset. That changes everything, because once governments normalize Bitcoin pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and giant institutions suddenly get political cover to buy it too. That's the domino effect. Mark Cuban's Bitcoin take. Mark Cuban sold most of his Bitcoin because it didn't behave like an inflation hedge. And honestly, his criticism is fair. Bitcoin didn't trade like gold. It traded like a high beta tech asset. But here's the problem. Cuban was measuring Bitcoin using the wrong framework. Bitcoin isn't a hedge against inflation. Bitcoin is a bet against the current monetary system. Different game, different scoreboard. Cuban brought a chess piece to a checkers tournament, then blamed the board. Elizabeth Warren is furious again, which probably means crypto is getting closer to winning something. Her latest obsession? Ripple and the Clarity Act, and this is where things get really interesting. The Clarity Act would finally define what's a security, what's a commodity, and what regulators can actually control, which means the SEC loses its favorite weapon, ambiguity. For years, crypto companies operated in regulatory quicksand. No clear rules, no certainty, just vibes and lawsuits. The Clarity Act changes that, and if it passes, institutional money floods in like Black Friday shoppers trampling each other for flat-screen TVs. We're talking ETFs, pension funds, stablecoins, tokenized assets, compliant DeFi, banks finally integrating crypto rails, and suddenly America stops exporting crypto innovation to Dubai and Singapore. The important part: this bill passing would be one of the largest crypto catalysts since Bitcoin futures launched. But don't get delusional. Congress moves slower than Ethereum gas fees in 2021. This bill could stall, get watered down, die in committee, become political theater. Nothing matters until signatures hit paper. Ethereum transaction fees hit all-time lows while activity surged, which means something incredible happened. The scaling plan actually worked. For years, critics screamed, Ethereum is unusable, gas fees are insane, it'll never scale. Now Layer 2 networks are absorbing activity, exactly like the roadmap intended, and institutions are noticing. Jane Street, one of the smartest trading firms alive, slashed Bitcoin ETF exposure and rotated tens of millions into Ethereum. That is not emotional investing. That is calculated positioning, meaning smart money thinks Ethereum is undervalued relative to Bitcoin right now. And when Jane Street rotates into your asset, you pay attention. Here's the macro chain reaction nobody in crypto wants to watch. Iran tensions rise, oil prices spike, inflation fears return, rate hike expectations rise, liquidity tightens, risk assets get punched in the throat. That's the chain. And Jamie Dimon warning about higher rates? That matters. Because whether people like him or not, Dimon has been early on macro risks more often than he's been wrong. Meanwhile, gold analysts are calling for $8,900 gold, which sounds insane until you remember sovereign debt is exploding, central banks are hoarding gold, geopolitical fractures are worsening, trust in fiat systems is eroding, and here's the biggest signal. Institutions are accumulating both gold and Bitcoin. Old money and new money are hedging the same problem. That should tell you something. SpaceX is preparing for a monster IPO at a rumored $2 trillion valuation, and buried in the filings, a $1.45 billion Bitcoin position. Think about that. The company trying to make humanity multi-planetary is holding Bitcoin on its balance sheet. That's not just treasury management, that's ideology. And once SpaceX becomes public, every retirement account in America suddenly gets indirect Bitcoin exposure. That's massive. And then things got even weirder. Binance launched SpaceX pre-IPO perpetual futures, which means crypto traders are now gambling on a private company through derivatives before the IPO even exists. This is financial inception, a casino inside a casino inside another casino. Dogecoin refuses to die. Revolut is launching a Dogecoin payment card. And yes, that sounds ridiculous, but here's the uncomfortable truth. Dogecoin has more mainstream brand recognition than most serious crypto projects. People laugh at Doge, while corporations quietly monetize the attention. Never underestimate meme power in a dopamine economy. This is the most important trend nobody talks about enough. Stablecoins are quietly becoming the internet's financial infrastructure, not speculation, infrastructure. They're already being used for payroll, remittances, global commerce, savings, cross-border transfers, and projects like Sui enabling gasless stablecoin transfers. That's how adoption scales, because normal people don't care about blockchains. They care if it's cheap, it's instant, and it works. The winners of the next cycle may not be the flashy coins. It may be the rails underneath everything. Not financial advice. Always do your own research. Here's the truth. Nobody on social media wants to admit the edge in 2026 isn't predicting every pump. It's filtering noise, because the noise is everywhere. Panic headlines, political drama, fake gurus, influencer portfolios, emotional traders, breaking news every 6 minutes. Meanwhile, institutions are quietly accumulating Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, Stellar, Cardano, Ondo Finance, Chainlink, Bitensor, stablecoin infrastructure, tokenization rails, hard assets. That's the real story, not the daily candles. Not the Twitter screaming, not the $86 billion crypto crash headline designed to terrify retail investors into selling bottoms again. Final message. Many Americans feel dissatisfied with the economy, and just making ends meet is an everyday struggle. We are entering a world where sovereign debt is unstable, inflation, high costs, and a disconnect between data and personal experience is valid. AI is reshaping labor. Payment systems are going digital, geopolitical fractures are widening, and financial infrastructure is being rebuilt in real time. In that environment, hard assets matter, infrastructure matters, multiple streams of income matters, awareness matters, patience matters, and the people who survive this cycle will be the ones who learned what to ignore and position accordingly. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button before Elizabeth Warren regulates your thumbs. Subscribe for weekly savage breakdowns on crypto, macro, money, manipulation, and the financial circus we all pretend is normal. And remember, in 2026, the edge isn't knowing what to buy, it's knowing what to ignore. Peace.